I go through the same thing every season. I look up lists and YouTube videos about all the top current animes. I watch and I read shit like Winter 2021, the 15 animes of this season ranked. I then compile my own list of candidates that I think have potential to actually be good, and 90% of the time, I'm let down because, surprise, surprise, the majority of anime, like so much else, is bad. When I was a kid, there was one TV show that seemed to cut through all the other shows that were on at the time and grab my attention. That show was Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Z was unlike any other show I watched as a kid. It was hyper masculine, it was edgy, it was violent, and I fucking loved it. I tuned in every day weekly to watch the latest chapter of the Z Fighters unfold. I eagerly anticipated the arrival of the terrifying Saiyans, patiently sat through the seemingly never-ending Snake Way episodes, and waited months for Goku to finally overcome the galactic terror of Frieza. I lovingly watched the entire run of Dragon Ball Z on television until its finale. By the time the final episode aired here in Canada, I was just starting high school. This would have been around 2004, which was a very different time for geeks and so-called nerds. Young boys like me who grew up cheering on Goku, Vegeta, and Krillin suddenly found themselves shy talking about it. Anime, which at this point was far from mainstream, was not cool. I wasn't even aware of the word anime at this time. I thought of Dragon Ball Z the same way I thought about Batman the Animated Series. They were cartoons. Different styles, yeah, but they were definitely cartoons, and cartoons were no longer cool to watch or talk about at this age. It wasn't until a friend of mine stumbled across a bootleg at a local Asian mall of something called Cowboy Bebop that I was really introduced to the world of anime. Yes, with the exception of Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon, and a bit of Sailor Moon, Cowboy Bebop was my gateway drug into the world of anime. I instantly became aware that this was not a cartoon. This was something much different. While Dragon Ball Z was not like Batman, Cowboy Bebop felt even further removed. Up to that point, all of the anime that I had consumed was aimed at a child and teenage audience. This was different. This was not a show for children. It was a mature adult show, and I instantly fell in love with it. Immediately after finishing Cowboy Bebop, my friends and I began regularly hitting up the Asia Mall searching for new anime to sink our teeth into. Just to remind you, this was 2004. I didn't even have high-speed internet at the time. We didn't know how to look up anime series or movies, or even what to search. We were doing this as rudimentary as you can get. Just like the video store days that were very much still alive then, we went to the mall, looked at all the covers and read the descriptions, and made our picks. We were buying anime purely off of the artwork and our gut feelings. It was an exciting time. We'd save up our money for these excursions and return with a stack of bootleg anime DVDs. Then we'd spend the following weeks watching everything we just bought, marathoning anime DVDs together even over entire weekends. It was this magical time that just so happened to take place in the tail end of the golden age of anime, typically thought of as the 80s and 90s. While I was embarrassed to express my fondness for Dragon Ball Z, I couldn't wait to talk about all the adult animes I was watching. These were different. These weren't kid shows. They were well written, thoughtful, and mature. Surely everyone else would see what I saw. But they didn't. I remember getting made fun of for attending an anime convention in Toronto. My friends and I actually skipped class on Friday just to attend the convention one more day. And while we were falling deeper and deeper in love with this genre of media, everyone around us simply didn't get it. I entered university thinking that people who believed anime was garbage were simply closed-minded. I thought if people would only lower their guards and give anime a chance, they'd have the same life-altering experience I did watching Cowboy Bebop for the first time. But, as time progressed, I slowly began to see what everyone else did. After watching anime for years, the list of top-tier animes left for me to watch was shrinking. I started watching anime with some of the best of all time, starting with shows like Cowboy Bebop, Samurai Champloo, Trigun, Gungrave, Berserk, Evangelion, movies like Akira, Ninja Scroll, Perfect Blue, Ghost in the Shell, Vampire Hunter D, and Sword of the Stranger. I'd completely fucked up my palate for anime. It was like eating my very first burger from a primo independent joint and then starting to eat from fast food shops after that. Nothing compared in taste and quality. I had started watching anime with the very best of the genre, which meant the quality would only continue to go down as I looked for more to watch. And worse, as I was getting older, I began to realize this genre of mature adult anime was not the norm, but more of a smaller subgenre. Likely because it's most profitable to target, the majority of anime being produced is aimed at an adolescent audience. The most well-known anime comes from the machine that is Shonen Jump. Adaptations from this weekly manga anthology account for the majority of anime produced. Shonen, literally translated as boy or youth, is a genre that targets the 12 to 18-year-old male demographic. Dragon Ball Z is an example of this type. And it wasn't until I brought home video copies of Dragon Ball Z, myself now much older, and rewatched the series, that I realized how flawed it was. Now, I'm not going to pick apart one of my favorite childhood TV shows, and I'm also not going to shit on what is ultimately a children's TV show, but I think we need to acknowledge that this genre of anime has serious flaws, and that's a major problem when the majority of anime is this genre. Shonen anime can first easily be identified as adaptations of mangas published in the weekly Shonen Jump. And while the worlds, mechanics, and characters differ, the core structure of this genre is power fantasy. Characters have to work to become stronger and stronger as the show progresses. They fight never-ending battles in a seemingly infinite escalation of stronger villains and power levels. And characters suffer from not having particularly clear goals or objectives other than training and getting stronger to overcome the next villain. Let's take Goku for example. In the first arc of Dragon Ball Z, Goku's faced with the threat of the powerful Saiyan Raditz. Following the events of Dragon Ball, at this point in the anime, Goku is essentially the strongest person on the entire planet. So the stakes need to be raised, and a villain is brought in from space. Goku overcomes Raditz, but at the cost of his life. Following Raditz's death, the next arc sets up two more Saiyans coming to Earth, even more powerful than Raditz was. Goku trains in the afterlife, is resurrected, and is able to beat both Saiyan warriors. But those Saiyan warriors were nothing compared to the next big bad, Frieza. Once again, Goku trains, fights hard, and is able to defeat Frieza. This formula goes on until the final conclusion of Dragon Ball Z. And it's when you start to see this never-ending escalation of power that you realize how hollow Dragon Ball Z really was. Storylines never really go deeper than bad guy appears and must be defeated. It's shallow writing with formulaic plots and one-dimensional characters that drag on for hundreds of episodes. And this same style and formula is used in shonen anime again and again and again and again and again and again. Of course, just like anything else, there are exceptions, but the majority of shonen anime contains this formulaic shallow writing. And I know that there are countless YouTubers and content creators that'll tell me I'm dead wrong, that the dark themes in Bleach transcend the simple format of the show. But I'm not convinced. It's like asking me to analyze the mature themes present in Looney Tunes. I just don't think this is higher tier storytelling. And I'm not trying to throw shade or shit on what someone else likes. I mean, I still love Dragon Ball Z, flaws and all. And I'm certainly not shitting on things meant for younger viewers. I completely understand why the majority of anime produced falls into this category. Japanese production companies are doing the exact same thing the American ones are doing. They're adapting materials with built-in audiences and low risk of failure. They're working to try and build franchises that can be easily commodified and merchandised. As much as people don't like to admit it, these are businesses whose primary concerns are profit, not artistic quality. Big franchises make big money. Lots of unique and colorful characters are easily merchandisable. Simple and safer content is easier to market and reach wider audiences. It's as obvious as something like sex sells, which is something the anime industry also uses heavily. After shonen anime, shit like harem anime also makes up a huge chunk of the industry. Shit where the main character is some shy loser who through some nonsensical situation gets surrounded by perfect looking females that all want to fuck him for no apparent reason. They do shit like the main character sees one of them naked and is all like, there's no real plot or substance to anything, and you know why? Because just like shonen, it's a fucking little boy's fantasy. It's the kind of shit horny teenage boys would dream up. Like imagine if a virus wiped out all the other men on the planet and you were the only one left and you had immunity, so every hot babe left would want to fuck you. Like fuck you. The shameless and gratuitous use of sexualized characters in anime is so obnoxious and overly used, it spawned its own term referred to as fan service. For literally no purpose other than making boys go, oh, and getting boners, anime constantly uses the cheap fan service tactics like upskirt panty shots, downshirt cleavage shots, and female characters barely wearing any clothing. Much like the boner comedies from the States, it cheapens the material and makes it almost impossible to view seriously. Where this becomes a real problem for me though, is the fucked up sexualization of underage girls. Now this actually stems from a larger, even more fucked up situation in Japan, which I'm not going to fully get into. For some strange reason, the age of consent in Japan is only 13 years old. The age of consent in most first world countries is 18. Which means the women portrayed as sexual objects in those cultures are younger adults and grown women. But with such a low age of consent in Japan, it's normal to view teenage girls as sexual objects. I know this is a cultural difference, but I can't accept how fucked up it is to sexualize what are, in my opinion, children. It's an unfortunate and messed up part of Japanese culture that is very common in the anime industry. I will admit as well, I'm very biased when it comes to art styles. I can't stand the chibi, overly exaggerated anime look. You know, where the girls all have eyes larger than their fucking heads and hair colors like blue or purple or some shit. Generally, these characters tend to sound something like this. It's like a bunch of screaming little girls. I can never understand when, given the option, anime artists chose to draw characters exaggerated and unrealistic. It's like, why draw this when this looks a million times better? It might sound like I'm being a snob, but is it really so wrong for me to ask for a higher tier of artwork? After I've watched Akira and Cowboy Bebop, how can I expect much lower grade animation and quality? I have the same issue with the god-awful CGI trend going on in anime right now. Anime started out looking like this, then they got more refined and looked like this, then they were debatably refined slightly more into this, but then they turned into this. What the fuck happened? Oh, it's to save time and money because hand-drawing anime takes way too long and costs too much? Well, fuck that. If you're giving me the option of waiting 2 years for this, or 2 months for this, I'll wait the fucking 2 years. So after you take out all the power fantasy anime for boys, the smutty anime made for perverts, anime made for both, what are you actually left with? Well, there's another genre of anime that I haven't named up to this point. It's the genre that all those god tier animes from my youth belong to, and it's seinen anime. Seinen, translated as something like young adult, refers to anime that targets an older, mature, and dare I say it, adult audience. This anime is often characterized by low episode counts, tighter writing and stories, and deeper topics and themes. And this is the real gold that I'm always mining for. It's the reason that I continue to go through those bullshit top anime lists and videos. Because every once in a while, I manage to find another gem hiding amongst all the other trash. So why does this have to be the fucking minority? Why can't we just get more mature hand-drawn anime? Wham, 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 right? It's just the reality of the medium. Mature adult animes are harder to market and merchandise. Like, what action figures are you gonna make from something like Monster or Kaiji? This is a business. Simple, safe content sells. Studios don't want to take chances on complex stories with mature themes. They want tried and true formulas with proven track records. It's the same reason we don't get as much R-rated movies from Hollywood anymore. Lower-rated films are much more profitable because of the wider audience. And I'm not saying anime needs to be berserk or even R-rated at all, but there's a maturity to seinen anime that elevates it above the genre. It's like how Alan Moore and Frank Miller were able to create comics that were so well written that they were suddenly in the discussion of greatest works of all time, not just the comic industry. Just because Cowboy Bebop is animated doesn't mean it's not a contender for one of the greatest television shows ever made. And that's the point. No one who's honestly critical would ever seriously put something like One Piece on this level. And those that would, I don't think have a developed palette of taste. So when people say to me they don't like anime, I say, you're right. 90% of anime is pretty garbage. But the 10% that isn't is truly something special. And you're missing out not watching it. The 1% that's really great elevates it itself above the genre. They're few and far between, and really hard to find, but they're definitely worth searching for. And I plan to start talking about them in the future.